Hi there, it's CJ Miller. I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm uh, I'm atop the Texas Street Bridge over our Red River. So here behind me is downtown Shreveport, and over here is Bossier City. And I have just come from this boardwalk where I watched the movie The Exorcist Believer. And I guess you could say, and I'm just kind of like moving back and forth. I guess you could say this video is about my reaction, my review, because that's what it is. There will probably be some slight spoilers. I will try not to really do it too much uh, because it's relatively new. So, and then there will be other people who do videos and spoil the hell out of it in their criticisms, positive and negative of it. Okay, first off, I'm going to go ahead and give my rating. When I rate a movie, I rate it on how much I'm willing to pay to see it. And so, standard theater is what I saw it in, standard price. Uh, so S for standard. Okay, so my thoughts on the movie itself. I'm going to start with the production value, which is a very well-produced movie. It looks very good. The pacing of the movie, it is very good. It is very good. It reminds me of early on, The Exorcist, the first one, 1973, has sort of almost a verite documentary feel, as if you were like watching these people from afar, watching these things play out, and then gradually you kind of you find yourself getting involved in the story, but there's not a lot of trope to be had in the genre at that point, and there's not a lot of fan service, you know. What I mean by that is that the sensationalism that happens naturally. So there's not a formula to be followed, a template to be followed at that particular point as far as this genre goes. That there is a formula does maybe a disservice to basically every possession or exorcism movie that has come after it, including movies within the franchise. So it's hard to say. It's like taking another Frankenstein movie and comparing it to the original Frankenstein with the Boris Karloff, and it's not gonna, that was original. And even though it's dated, it's like when I look at that movie and I see Boris Karloff and the Frankenstein makeup and everything, it's like, nope, that's the OG, and it's not going to be topped. And that's kind of how The Exorcist is. That being said, not just in that first movie, but in some of the other movies that have come after, some of the sequels, prequel, even in the TV series, there are some nods. They're not necessarily plot connections, but there's some thematic in the atmosphere, an occasional reference or mention. For one, when Chris McNeil is introduced into the movie, she gives a little exposition about how she was driven to really get into research and look at exorcism to try to understand what was happening. And she wrote a book, and when the book came out, there was a distance between her and Reagan disappeared, and she couldn't find her, which would imply that maybe she changed her name. And that's what happened in the TV series, whereas Sharon Glass playing Chris McNeil and Gina Davis playing Angela Rance, who was Reagan. She changed her name. But anyway, another nod to that were the characters, Angela and Catherine. They're the names of the two possessed girls in this movie, who were roughly the age that Reagan was. And they don't specifically name their ages. Uh, from the beginning of this movie, uh, it's the birth of one of the girls, and then it shoots to 13 years later, and that would mean 12 going on 13, because you don't have a number. You're zero growing on your first year during your first year of life, unless of course maybe this is going to be considered that some Chinese cultures actually count that first year, and maybe even I think they count some of the life in the womb. I don't, I've heard of that, but anyway, so these girls would be 12, roughly 13. They look, it's plausible, I guess. They do seem to be a little old for the part, but then again, so did Linda Blair, although she played it well. It's right on that cusp of, the one girl, Leslie Odom Jr.'s daughter. I think that's his name. The actor who played. I should really go back and look at this before I give a full review. But whatever, I'm here on the bridge. I'm giving my reaction. Forgive my nonsensicalness of not having perfect notes about the cast. But his daughter seems to be burdened with maybe the daughter of a single father, and has a certain maturity, subtextual, up until you find out that it's not so much subtext, Anyway, the newness of The Exorcist in the original, we want to remember that was, yes, a scary movie, but the scariness was incidental to the story that was being told, which was the phenomenon of possession through the eyes of investigators. The mother trying to figure out what was going on with her daughter, doctors trying to find out what this new phenomenon is that's going on with their patient that they cannot find. There's a detective trying to find out what's going on in the neighborhood with a director that had died, and then desecration of the church. It seems to link the two, and then rumors abound about what's going on with the girl, and more of that gets explored in the novel than it actually does. The Detective Kinderman, his role in the first movie gets kind of like downplayed a little bit. He's more present in the novel, but still, it's a investigative detective story surrounding supernatural events, and the mystery that's being explored is the mystery of faith. That's the story that's being told. Well, that gets told here also. It's not just and it's done in a way that it's not just bullshit. You could almost believe what's going on here. There are some things that feel typical, basic. The father of the evangelical girl who becomes possessed. You almost feel like, like he's douchey. He is. He's, I don't know what to say. I mean, like, it's but there's all sorts, there's more to his character. It was very topical. Underneath it, though, that these are people who are realistic people, and there's more to them than the character that's being seen on the screens. If you have a understanding of subtext, and I always look for subtext when reading a book, that's what's not printed on the page, and then trying to find out that gives the realness to me. And so one of the things, when they give too many, and they did it a little bit, but it wasn't over the top, and it wasn't too much. But when they give a little bit of fan service, it's like it kind of takes me away from the actual story and reminds me that I'm watching a movie, and kind of raises me out of my immersion. So there's a person walking this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, and then I'm going to come back and and finish the review. You won't notice. It'll be just a split second for you. But yeah. Well, anyway, I'm gonna walk a little bit towards Shreveport. Yeah, so it's a good movie. Like I said, rated S for standard fare. Okay, there's one particular moment. One of the girls is looking over her father's shoulder and sees an image of a demon behind him. And it's like whatever. And it's like that's a shot that is directly out of Insidious. Now, Insidious, it's a good franchise. It's a lesser franchise, even the first one, which was good. And I don't feel like the Exorcist franchise, since it's the original, I don't really feel like it needs to borrow shots or inspiration from other franchises. It was the first; it did it best. Um, it was a quick little jolt. It got people's attention in Insidious, and if this were new and audiences were unaware of Insidious, it would work for this. However, if you go to see a possession movie, you have probably seen Insidious and The Exorcist and probably a few other possession movies. So tropes don't do service. And there's a few of them here that maybe do. Okay, so that being said, what this movie is trying to tell, and of course it is a possession story, but really the story is the story of community. It's the story of even if you don't specifically believe in everything that your next door neighbor believes in, your faith and their faith, they can live and coexist within the same community, because that's the world that we live in. We don't live most of the time, but certainly in more developed countries, we don't live in isolated pockets of community where our faith and our superstitions or whatever are unique to us. Now, I know from my time living in South Louisiana and in South Florida, there was a lot of people from the Caribbean islands, and really from Africa by way of those traditions, that the voodoos and things like that, the gods and demigods that they look at are very similar to some of the Catholic saints, and so it works. They go side by side. Another pause. I will also say this, that the Catholic faith, and I'm not putting it down, but the Roman Catholic faith, well, during the Roman conquering of Europe and bits of Africa and pretty much the known world at its time, it would take with it its customs and its known religions and everything, and it would go to the various parts of the land. And what would happen is in conquering those lands and claiming them in the name of the Caesar, the emperor, whatever, that it was customary for food, local colloquialisms, and religious practices to become intermingled as the cultures got conquered or absorbed into the Roman army customs. And yeah, that's just what happened, And so in a way, the Roman Catholic, which they didn't even start out being specifically Christian, as I'm aware of it, the Roman armies, but they did eventually become Roman Catholic. And by that time, they have absorbed so many various different cultures from all over Europe, Asia, Africa, that it stands to reason that some of these earlier rites such as exorcism will have survived throughout the century, even if only thought of as basically superstition. But I don't know, not so much anymore. One of the things that The Exorcist did that a lot of people did not know, the phenomenon of exorcism and possession in the sense that it was told by that point. Gardnerian Wiccanism was just coming over to America from the late 50s and the early 60s. There wasn't a lot known about, widespread about New Age kind of stuff. Some of it, but it was mostly superstitious kind of stuff, It was still novel. There wasn't a lot known about exorcism for sure. And that was the mystery that was being told in the first story. And it was telling this story inspired by the Georgetown exorcism, and then the family moved to St. Louis, ironically, where Linda Blair was born. And the ending of The Exorcist is specifically inspired, by the two priests that did the exorcism in the 1600s and Ludlow, in France, where the nuns became possessed and whatever. So what we hear from that is that the priest became possessed, and for the rest of their lives felt intermingled or haunted by these demons or whatever, because of the close brushness of it. So but then again, if you're a minister of God, what's new? If you're truly a minister of God, you are staving off evil all the time anyway, so yeah. There is a school of thought that maybe the nuns weren't even possessed in Ludlow, that maybe they had gotten a hold of some bad bread made with flour and were suffering from ergotism. These two girls in this movie, they went out into the woods and they went missing for about 3 days. We know this from the trailer, so I'm not giving too much away, but some spoilers coming up. Okay, and so is it not possible they could have eaten some berries or got a hold of some sort of toxic thing that gave them something akin to ergotism? One of the things that happens when Chris McNeil is finally introduced into the movie, the father of one of the daughters asks Chris, does she actually believe in this? Or is it real? Does she believe it's real? And she says placebo is real, the placebo effect. And sugar pills are real, and faith is real, and belief is real. And that's really what the point, is, whether or not it's real or not, it's the faith that's real, and that's the same thing that the doctors are talking about in the first movie. The victim's belief in possession makes the symptoms, so the belief in exorcism. But this movie takes a more wide view of the rituals of exorcism throughout various different cultures. Little bit of fan service there, or social inclusion there. It's okay. It's not exactly out of place, because there is some truth in the possession happens all over the world throughout various cultures. Typically in Haitian cultures, it's people become possessed of their ancestors, not demons, but that's, and that's what the girls are trying to do, by the way. They're trying to connect with one of the girls' mother who's died. And that kind of opens the doorway. And they don't do it with the Ouija board. But they do it with another type of divination that is very similar to a Ouija board. So, and if you know it, then you know it. If and that's cool. I don't want to spoil that part. For me, it was like a thing. It's like it was a ping of recognition, but because it's like, yeah, that's it. In according to you know, uh, Christian faiths, dabbling with the occult in any way, shape, or form like that can open doors or whatever. So, um, but it's so weird because what's happening here is the power of community is the conduit for the power of God, you know, which is great, you know. Uh, I think that's sort of the message of all these religious texts anyway. It's basically rules on how to get along, how we as humans get along with each other, how we regard and treat each other is how we regard and treat God. So that works for me. Okay, so I'm at the end of the bridge. I'm going to close the video out. I'm going to walk home. I will say goodbye, love and light, peace, God bless, good night.